Hello, everyone. This is our team. My name is Cristina Voto, and you can see all my colleagues too. Rodrigo Martín-Iglesias, Khashayar Razghandi, Christian Stein, and we are going to present a work titled Alternative Monsters and the Probability of the Impossible. We wanted to share some images, so our work aims to create a disruptive vision that link different fields of knowledge and cultural backgrounds. There are the knowledge and the backgrounds that we share, opening the imagination of the present and the future. So to achieve these objectives, we use metaphorical and methodological strategies aimed at design alternative futures. We think that being human animal, we must be able to imagine other futures that escape, or at least could escape, the figuration of the linear evolutionary promise and the doom of exponential progress. So this is why we're working on a series of differential approaches that focus on the concept of monstrosity. We are interested in this concept because, starting from the suggestions that come from the etymological framework of the word, because etymologically monstrous comes from moneo, that means to warn in Latin, can be thought, the monster can be thought as a warning about biopolitical and political life, and can mark a displacement out from normativity. So our work aim at firstly recognize this monstrous perspective, and then we take account to the process of staging monstrosities in order to warn, to point out some biopolitical relations that we live within contemporary society and that we would like to break, to open. So in this task of confronting the monstrous and the process of monstrification as a key to finding disruptive alternatives, some questions arise, and those questions were like the starting point of our research. So how to slay a monster, how to tame a monster, how to breed a monster, how to take care and understand a monster, and how to become finally a monster. Here we present different approaches that are inspired by cultural studies, game studies, biology, and AI studies. And within a colonial perspective, we will try to answer those questions. Our work is deeply interdisciplinary and is aimed at imagining alternative future, also in a very intentionally cross-cultural perspectives. The results allows us to glimpse the opening of possible future beyond the hegemonic logic and the dominant prediction. And so I leave the floor to my colleague, Christian.
Yes, thank you, Cristina. As I'm basically working in the field of game studies and game design, also from a cultural perspective, my approach to monsters is one from games, because the monsters that we are fighting these days, if they are not metaphorical monsters, we mostly find them in games, in video games mostly. And if you have a look at all the monsters that you can find in all these games, then you realize something that is pretty interesting. These monsters are designed to showcase to be something else, something unseen, something we cannot categorize, something we do not know. So the design approaches are not to show something familiar. It's the opposite. It's about showing something that we cannot understand, that we cannot classify. So within the realm of video games, we have a whole field that is basically only about the design of these monsters. And why is that the case? In our day-to-day life, I am pretty sure we are not facing this extraordinary other anymore. We are not facing something we cannot classify, something that we do not know how to deal with. And the monsters are representing in these games the challenges of the world in a way against us. So looking at the question of games and monster design, we can say the monsters are challenging us to be the best of what we can as humans. They are challenging us because we cannot fall back into the patterns and methodologies of what we have learned, what we have practiced already. We are challenged to find other ways of handling them, especially in the so-called boss fights in games. We normally find criteria that are particularly designed to break the already established streaks of habits that we have learned in the games already. So something new comes in, something that is hidden that we have to figure out. It is asking us to push all our strength and possibilities to the maximum, and at the same time learn something new. Around all this, there is an interesting question that relates to the question of games in general. Games are by now, at least in my opinion, the most important media and also interactive cultural good we are dealing with in present times. There's a huge field of art, of creativity, of independent productions that are trying to push the limits of what we can interactively experience, where we can basically part-time live in these worlds. And there is also an observation that very talented young people are more and more going to these game worlds, are leaving in a way the focus on regular career, a regular world to live in for these game worlds. And you can say this is a bad thing that it's happening. How can we get them back? And why are they not putting all their creativity, their workforce, their brilliant minds to something serious? And the answer of that might be because the serious out there is not presented as a monster. It's something that where you cannot feel that you can actually do something, where your creativity and your talent is probably needed more than ever these days, but you do not get the feedback for what you do in a way that you can feel your capability and your impact. Games are designed for feedback, for impact, for interacting with the world. And to finish my trail of thoughts on this, the perspective of monsters that we can see and learn in video games, personally, I think it's very, very important for designing the challenges of the future. We need to kind of transform these challenges into monsters that make our world interesting on the one hand, but also create feedback. I had been muted. I don't know why. Probably I was too long. Some invisible monster has intervened. My kind of finishing line was, if we want to look at the challenges of the future, we need to take serious the design of monsters that are drawing the attention of the most talented people of our generations, because they are able to create worlds that are interesting to live in, that give the feedback of capability, and that show us the other exists, the other that makes the world interesting and not just a collection of categories and established methods. So maybe so much from me for a start.
Yeah, I think I can continue on that. Christian, thank you very much. My name is Rodrigo Martín-Iglesias. I'm architect and doctor in design from the University of Buenos Aires. And my approach comes from the design of futures you can say that this field that gather together speculative design and design fiction and so on, and in a way future studies also. So in this sense, in the context of a course that I teach in the University of Buenos Aires, a course on futures design, we think about monstrification as a counter-hegemonic strategy, as a strategy for a displacement from the norm, the normal, and the normalized, you can say. So the design of alternative futures from a monstrous perspective is firstly verified in the small sample that I brought today to show you, if I have the opportunity later, maybe, to show some images, but also the glossary of terms, the conceptual crossings, and the practical hybridizations we will deal with. Tell us about a variety of approaches and characterizations which account for the design of alternative futures, but also, as we call it, alternative futures, trying to recover something that is more rooted, not also alternative, maybe also related with a concept that we developed that we called xeno futures. But in this sense, this design of alternative futures can be seen as a phenomenon of polyhedral richness, as a conjecture and as a praxis. So as a starting point, we suggest two mythological metaphors through which to understand the design of alternative futures as a field of knowledge. On the one hand, the design of alternative futures can be seen as a chimera. It manifests itself indescribable, with the general appearance of an animal, a lion, but with the parts of other animals. It is not known exactly how many or exactly which parts of which animals. In other words, the ineffability of its condition, because it escapes clarification, makes any taxonomy partial and different from others. In order to characterize it, we resort to composition, to the sum of parts that do not seem to constitute a system or account for totality. Whether this implies that its systematization will result in the appearance of a new species, or whether it is indeed an hybrid and mutant organism by nature, is still a mystery. On the other hand, continuing with the metaphorical interpretation, the design of alternative futures can be seen as a hydra, polycephalous per excellence, because of its thousands of faces. We could also call it polyhedral, but above all, its distinctive feature is that for every head or node in a conceptual network that is cut off, two new ones will appear in its place. Not only does it shows us another aspect of its multiplicity, but this image also helps us to represent another phenomenon, its constant growth and the apparent impossibility of its reduction to a series of quantifiable aspects, its numbers of heads. This is so to the point that if we could map all the nodes and relationships already previously established in the characterizations of alternative futures design, we would undoubtedly feel that they do not account for its complexity or its totality, even if it breadth eloquently invades other disciplinary fields. In any case, the need for attempt these comprehensive descriptions and interpret the results proves as urgent to us as the 18th century naturalist work. Paradoxically, it is clear that anyone who has experienced the design of alternative futures can recognize it immediately. But as with aromas or odors, our ability to recognize it is not matched by our ability to describe or explain it. This requires a distance from pure praxis that is only possible through critical study and conscious experimentation. In visions of futures, included in those that mark our disciplinary formation, there is frequently an idealization of bodies, spaces, objects, and landscapes, a pure beauty conceived through stereotypes. That is why we seek a displacement of cultural stereotypes morally marked since at least the 19th century. In this sense, the underlying premise proposes an ethical and aesthetic functioning, escaping the exclusion systems of culture, in order to produce, by means of haphazard and artificial aesthetic intervention, new visions beyond the traditional forms. So, monstrification is then offered as a cultural machine that reveals the functioning of an order, of the power of the norm, a monstrified device that allows to make visible, denaturalize, and make delirious the functioning of biology, medicine, politics, language, and images. A monstrified device as a critical and aesthetical force that allows readings and views of the future and the limits of culture. Our first proposal is to consider the use of generative adversarial networks, the GAN, as a contemporary monstrified strategy that does not have a merely instrumental or exploratory purpose, but it intentionally seeks displacement, disruption, and deformity as mode of resistance to the aesthetic and moral automatism of the hegemonic and unconscious cultural matrices. We are neither on the side of the apocalyptic nor on the side of the integrated with regard to the use of automatic technologies. We only know that our future cannot do without that semiotic and somatic switch between the artificial and human intelligence. Khashayar?
Thank you, Rod. Hi, I'm Khashayar. It's a pity that we cannot share a screen and share our slides, but I try to go through my slide and Hey, I'm Khashayar. I'm sitting actually in Berlin. I'm part of the excellent cluster Matters of Activity. Originally, I'm coming from material science, but I was dealing with monsters of biology a lot, biomaterials, different material systems in biology. So,
Khashayar, did you try to share now your screen? Because I think I can.
I can try. Yes, that is good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you see?
Yes, we do.
Yes. So I'm coming from material science, biomaterials, monsters of the biology, but sitting on the Matters of Activity in Berlin, I was the last 8-10 years of my life, exposed on one hand, and the concepts from humanity on the field of material, like the materiality of our being or co-being. So information philosophy, cultural studies, feminism, materialism, and on the other hand, to design, teaching, and like engaging with designers on the materiality of the objects and things that we design, and try to rethink some of these and bring it back to design strategies, to material sustainability, or to new discourses of active new materialism. Today, mainly I want to talk about growth, like the monsters of growth and the growth of monsters, so to say. This is like somehow I try to put our relation to nature and the monsters of the nature in two different paradigms that we're actually dealing with. On the right side, the patriarchal side, we started maybe as like a nature to live within, the animistic cohabitation that we used to have. And then the modernity kicks in, etc., 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 and we have nature to dominate, exploitation, Anthropocene, capitalism. And then the crisis hits. The crisis hits, and now we have to face the monsters of the nature, and we are trying our best with the geoengineering, with this, with all whatever possible techno-science fixes to try to tame the monsters. But there's another way of looking at it, which is like supported by material science, biology, and this new material, new active materialism, new feminist materialism that is more paying attention to the entangled co-being of life on Earth, to the histories and ecologies, and also to live with nature, like try to explore and like be and like accept and acknowledge that we're part of the entangled dynamism and structure that we call life. And on the other hand, try to co-work with nature in entangled future making. So basically symbiosis. I will go through a few examples from biology, the works that we were engaged with. On the right top side, you see ice plant seed capsule. It grows in dry areas. What you are looking at is a dead tissue. So it's a dead tissue, which like the seed capsule protecting the seeds inside. And the moment the raindrop drops on it, it starts to open, so coming back to life. And how it does it is through material structure at various length scale. I'm not going to go through the details of what you see, but basically just sugar molecules, different cellulose molecules coming together, building structures, architecture actually at different material scales, and trying to build a sense actor, something that responds to the humidity outside and like bring the activity to the macro scale. On the bottom right side, you see appendicularia. It's like a type of tunicate. It's like this big, like millimeter size. It's kind of like a sperm-like little animal, but what you see around it is a house, is a filtering house that is ziggurat around its head and inflates it to the structure that you're seeing on the images on the left. So it builds up the whole apparatus, the whole artifact, the whole environment around itself, and like try to filter. They just try to feed from whatever is in the surroundings. So entangled in responsive to environment on the top, and entangled and responsive and entangled in a sense of like breaking the dichotomy. Like the top one is breaking the dichotomy of inside, outside, like autonomous, like individuated thing, and the bottom one, the dichotomy of the subject object, subject artifact, subject things, like it's part of it, but it's not part of it, it's an extended part of the animal. I have this in mind, and like I will try to go through like how can we narrate this? How can we narrate what's happening, the active phenomena that we are seeing, the usual, the paradigm that we are living in is the material property function. And this basically helomorphic type of looking and making, word making gave up to monsters, because like you're individuated things with individuated properties dealing with individuated other things. But like I want to try to maybe narrate it through a different active material paradigm. All the material structure that we're looking at in the last slide, like we make a basis triad of structures, compositions, and processes giving rise to properties, but maybe not properties, because what we really see is things with property, but things with operativity too, like things are operating on each other. And that is the part that is missing in our helomorphic conception of matter, matter as passive, matter as something to shape with, to heat, beat, treat. This is the conception that we're dealing with in our fabrication paradigm. So that gives rise to monsters of today. And performativity, everything that we deal with in life, in nature, is situated in histories and ecology. Ecology as in sense of interrelation in a synchronic sense, and history in a sense of diachronic interrelation that they have. So performativity and operativity are things that move away from this individuated subject-object, inside-outside, active-passive way of looking at matter. And if you go deeper into maybe the making paradigm that we use and biology use growth. We use fabrication. Growth is more like a recipe, is approximate, it's like poor. It depends on the available resources. Few basic elements. All life is made of 25, 30 elements of the chemical table you remember from school, while we use in our smartphones something like 80 of those elements. We are rich, abundant resources. We heat, we treat a lot of energy, we put things, and we make exact things. We follow blueprints. Biology solves this poorness, like low available energy, forces, and material by building up entangled structure, entangled dynamism, and performative structures. While we do select the material, make parts, put them together in a system and devices, basically. Biology makes multifunctional stuff, and it urges to entangle activities while we import activity. The most advanced robots that we have a cable for information and a cable for energy. The ice plants that you saw is basically just interacting with the environment, is responding to it, it is entangled with it. It's less helomorphic conception. It's open and entangled, and we make closed and protected system. We make secure and fixed design. And all of this following the logic of growth, the growth of monsters in biology, give rise to adaptive design. Biology is open and is entangled, so need to be adaptive. So if we take all of those things and try to imagine a different way of looking at growth, any kind of growth, from biological to social to economical, then we end up with few things that point to the creative nature of the entangled dynamism and the performative structures that they're dealing. Everything is situated within histories and ecologies first. That means that they're, instead of individuated subject-object, we are dealing with dynamic meshworks of interrelations. And the boundary conditions and the constraint in between this system are the creative force, basically giving rise to the activities and phenomena of the biology. Another thing that happens if you don't just get the matter and property and function and move to operativities and performativities is that the boundaries start to be blurry. Interfaces become to be more fluid. You follow the chain of operation instead of individuated stuff. So you have event-based boundaries. And in the end, you don't have evolution of things, you have co-evolution of things, actons and context, co-evolution of everything together. And all of this gives a different kind of stance-based ontology, so to say. If you maybe a few more minutes on growth as co-creation strategy, in a sense of when most of the problems we're dealing with is wicked problems or complex problems. They're systemic, so many interrelations, and they're dynamic, constantly changing. How to deal with those? How to bring those these notions that we're dealing with, situatedness, co-evolution, the event-basedness, the thinginess instead of deviceness, the entanglement. How can we bring that to creation? I don't go through the detail. I just want to show that a few of the design practices that we were doing, and this future making, co-creation strategies, basically, that we can take growth. One of them is that speculative inquiry and growth as a methodology, starting a project, detaching from the realities that we are dealing with the same kind of question that we've been dealing, it's just unbonding and rebonding with a different context. So there we can address the co-evolution of context and act on better. The other one that is like a project that one of the students was doing is maybe growth as a design strategy, as a creation strategy can help us to see project not as linear, but like you see in the middle, like evolution of the project, the growth of the project from the basic idea to the project to the startup that they're dealing with, right? The product basically. So it's not just biology and science, it's like you're dealing with economy in this case. And as education through research and research through education methodology. Growth as creation or co-creation strategy can be used to bring science design in the co-creation spaces, and just with the exposures, with the inspiration, with the entanglement of different knowledges, give rise to nucleus of the projects that later can grow into full-scale architectural or design projects. Maybe a short recap. Hylomorphic monsters of growth can be looked at or dealt with or addressed from a different perspective, to see matter as active, as operative, as performative, and to rethink growth. Like it just like help us to look at the whys and ways of biological material solution and biology, and the whys and ways of how we think of growth and how we make stuff. And of course, we can learn that bio-inspiration is about learning from the monsters of biology, not the real entangled monsters, not the monsters that we made. And maybe last but not least, futures. Futures is like more like a horizon that is approaching us from far, and like as long as we deal with the complex problems that this horizon is bringing us from this perspective of hylomorphic active passive dichotomies, and like the dominance that is like the concept of growth is bringing with us, the Capitolocene and the Anthropocene and all of that, like the monsters are not going to leave us. So maybe for future it might make sense to get a different way of looking at growth, knowing that things are situated within histories and ecology, and appreciating the entangled dynamism and structure. Then we can deal with the openness and the uncertainty through adaptation. So the complexity can be only dealt if you deal with it and address it in an open and adaptive way. Co-being and co-making is co-evolution is the word, because everything is within this entangled meshwork, of course local, but within a meshwork of interrelation. And moving away from autopoiesis or autonomy, like things, object, close object, and properties, and moving to symbiosis and performativity, which bring us to intersectional and interdisciplinary practices. And that's how rethinking of the growth can help us to deal with the monsters and like have a different way of future making, so to say. I stop sharing the screen and I give it back to Cristina.
Okay, thanks Kashi for this really suggesting presentation and journey through biology. I have the duty now to close, to get to a conclusion of our roundtable.
Cristina, I think you can recap on something that you want to show before. Maybe if you want to show it now.
No, it's okay, because because since we have like 15 minutes from now, I maybe go to conclusion, and then I would like to give you the floor for showing you the works of your student in Buenos Aires. Maybe
okay,
I think that would be
as you will.
Or maybe what we can do is I give you the floor for showing us those works, and then I get to conclusions.
Okay.
Okay.
Christian, do you want to show something that you also didn't have the opportunity to show?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fine. I tried to just verbalize what I wanted to say. As we have 15 minutes, maybe, do you think it makes sense to kind of connect a bit what we said and discuss a bit about it, or are we lacking the time to do this now?
No, I don't think so. Let me show some images and to let maybe Cristina can close a little, and then we can connect things and chat. I think we have the time.
Okay.
15 minutes. I will be very quick. So let me show this. Well, this is the presentation I was. So we'll skip this and just show you some of our experiences with design of futures and generative adversarial networks, but working with this idea of monstrosity and monstrification, no? How to take something and work with not only hybridization or mutation, but also with monstrification. So it's just a brief catalog of images that in a way I think shows how the students are working with this approach of the things that maybe are out of the norm, you can say, even with architecture or landscapes, because it's the School of Architecture, but we have actually a student for different fields of design also. And well, I have some reflex possible things to say about how to use these generative adversarial networks in this context, but I think we can save that for later, maybe. And Cristina, if you want to say something, maybe to close a little.
Yes. Because our challenge, in a way, like appreciating our different fields, our different perspective, was also to think about a monstrous epistemology. So taking like this challenge of making a really cross-cultural proposition, because we really think that in every field of knowledge we were passing through, the monsters always embody an exceeding of the limits and an alteration into the collective status quo. And we were really interested in this alteration, this displacement, because the existence of the monsters always subverts the limits of what is commonly considered normal, acceptable, even within an epistemological framework. So already from this first assumption, we can say that the constitutive matrix of monstrosity is the relational value that drives the embodiment of the limits of the intelligible towards the emergence of a disruptive vision. So we were really interested in these disruptive visions, because monsters always manifest the existence of boundaries, categorical limits that they materialize in an overcome form, like staging out normativity, shifting out of the border, and shifting out taxonomies. And this exceeding character of monstrosity makes visible how the abnormal, no, in its proper etymological meaning, as we said before, exists in interdependence of what is recognized as normal. So the monstrous always displays its force of subversion regarding the classification precisely in the limits through the mixtures, through the heterogeneity. The monstrification is always initially perceived within every field as a loss of norm and a loss of defined limits. The figures of the monstrosity becomes fluctuating changes as if seen through moving water until singularity and identity disappears, even within frameworks, epistemological frameworks. So to articulate these borders is above all to create relation and show implication, to replace, let's say, the ventriloquism of traditionally understood representation with the tools capable of creating connection. And we were really interested in this connection. This connection allowed the reciprocal structuring of social actors, of epistemological actors, and the different distribution of competences and responsibility in designing and making the word, or maybe we could say wording, as maybe Dora and Anna we would say, to emerge. So relation performs norm, which in turn perform the subject and the object of vision and discourse, and in ways that, being always contingent and partial and situated, as Khashayar explained before, can always be differently articulated. So the monsters demonstrate another order of signification, and also another order of generation, another order of growth, another order of playing, another order of thinking about the epistemological limit. And we were really interested in these relations. From east to west, from north to south, we can say there are always monsters that seem to be capable of communicating everything that stands on the edge of what is enunciable within a communitarian horizon. So we can really think about monster as an exteroceptive, that's something that responds to stimuli originating from the outside. So no autopoiesis, as Khashayar would say, but a sympoiesis, a monstrosity that articulates the seen with the visible, the imaginated with the imaginable. This is really our main hypothesis. So to conclude our presentation, we can think that to reflect on the relational, differential, and composable stratification that organize this monstrum specification, let's say, allows the organization of a warning device where other possible imaginaries can be figured and therefore designed to let the alternative emerge. This is why we consider the process of creating monstrosity as the trigger of the probability of the impossible. If we accept that we live in monstrosity, where phenomena live in space-time figuration that highlights an inseparability of the components that interact locally, then we can probably make room from relation as what materialize existence. So to imagine such as monstrosity is at the end to take a double responsibility, both towards the past and the future, almost turning the historical perspective inside out and making the past something that is not yet, but it can still be. And with these last things about an epistemological monstrous perspective, I open a shared conclusion with you guys also.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe let me quickly pick up on certain things there and kind of binding it back to my field. I really have the feeling that as you said, Khashayar, like crossing out autopoiesis, I find that a very strong move that's kind of directly going against a system theory of a classical kind, and showcasing that there is always a crucial interface between the actors and the environment, and none of them can be what they are without each other. And in this scenario, if we look at the works of your students, Rod, then I see that this interesting movement to try to push out of what we can think, not only what we have, what we can see, observe, and classify, but also to push further on the next step and the next step. So how can we get out of the trail of thinking that is kind of pre-created by our past to really see something else? Because that is the area of monsters in the end, right? We do not know how they look, what they do. That makes them scary, but also highly fascinating. And so maybe to twist that a tiny bit, to get into the area of monsters, we might need to find strategies to become monsters ourselves, right? To stop that kind of thinking that brings us just to the next step.
Thanks. I mean, like what Cristina said, like put everything like in one big picture. Like the word classification that you use is like very interesting for me. For me, it's like this individuation and subject and like all of the subject property. This is about classification. The modernity kicked, and I don't want to go deep into what is modernity. This is not my realm, but like that is where the to control, to dominate, you need to classify. You need to, like borders. That's why we have the word queer. That's why we have the word trans. Anything that is monsters out. I want to classify, I want to make order, and I want to dominate. That's why the monsters should go out. That's why like we have these things. And this kind of continued even to today, like I feel we live in a prediction paradigm, and like I take your words that like maybe we need like to shift. Of course, appreciate the entanglement and all of that, but this shift from prediction paradigm to co-creation paradigm will add something that maybe will bring all. So thanks.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that, because you give me I think the right word to do that. That is modernity, because I think there is another interesting dialectic there, talking about monstrosity. That is the project in front of the object. Because the monster can be seen as the object, as Julia Kristeva said, that is not human, not animal, not man, not woman, etc., etc. And I think that in this dialectic with project, we can see that the project serves the project as a practice, but as a way of building worlds. Projection. It's also a dispositive in the Foucaultian sense of the modernity itself, and so because it deals with predictability, and it deals with reason, which is reasonable, or how we go from the objectives to the goals, and which means are used. So I think that in a way, go from the project as a tool of European modernity or Eurocentric modernity to the object as the representation, or even not the representation, but the materialization, the incarnation of which is diverse, which is transitional, which is moving, which is blurry, which is fuzzy, etc. I think it's a way to also not only to open the door for the impossible in this current world, but also to escape the cages in which we are in, somehow, the cultural cages. So I think we reach the time limit, and I don't know if there is some kind of interaction, possible interaction with someone on the other side, but who knows?
It's all monsters watching, I'm sure.
Yeah. Probably.
Finally getting the appreciation they deserve.
Very, very funny, very funny. Well, great.
It says that we have 10. I think we have 10 minutes more. I just was told that we have 10 minutes more. So I want to bring the discussion maybe more to because we all of us mentioned like monsters and like different type of monsters that we're dealing with, and I want to throw the word openness of future on the table. And like let everybody like from this perspective, we have this in front of us. We are living in it. Very depending where you are living, you live in a different type of future, basically. And
I mean, I think
very interesting because it's in a way is why we are here, because there were a call about the openness of futures, and we thought that it's in a way it was very relevant and pertinent for our own research and lines of research and exploration. So I think it's very adequate to put that on the table. Christian?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about the difference between future and futures, right? The plural there is, you can really dig into the plural a bit and think, okay, what is that? Is it like, is the plural coming from the possibility, or is it coming from a reality? Is it also the realities that we are living in? And that kind of brings back, again, from a bit of a game perspective, the difference between a game and a simulation. In a simulation, we try to model everything relevant for prediction and control. In a game, we create feedback that is motivating and informing the gamer. The feedback systems of games are not designed to represent the system, but to motivate the gamer. Therefore, we can kind of project that a bit on our possible futures, maybe, and say, do we want to simulate what's coming, or do we want to play it? And I think that's a major difference, because in the end, at least we are probably not the only player in this game, but we are the ones we know best in a way.
I would like to keep with the suggestion introduced by you, Kristen, because I think that this relationship between game and play can be also useful to think about another pair of categories, which is future and sorry, this works in French and Italian. I'm not sure about English. Advenir. In Spanish also it works, but I'm not sure in English.
Maybe you can explain it.
No, but it's still the problem of the anticipation. Like, for example, as a cultural model, you can we as human animal, we always add this anticipation model of what could be expected by the future, apocalypses, or today maybe a cultural model would be dystopian narratives. So these are ad venum. So I maybe say that in Latin so that it could maybe work in a more wider way. So something that it's probably to come, but the prefix of these works already signs where it should come, and it's from the outside, from the inside, from something that it's pretended to be unknown to something that is known. And this already marks spatially an organization, a spatial organization of the categories, which, of course, it also speaks to us about a linearity of the time. So if something comes from the outside to within the inside, and the prefix is the ad, it has a linear connection of these. Advenire is in Spanish, advenir is in French, in Italian would be avvenire. Normally the avvenire in Italian is always related with Christianity. So And this figuration, the spatial figuration, of course, brings a precise cultural model that is fixed within modernity and that it limits the future in a predictable anticipation. So this is my last suggestion.
Yeah, I will make just a little remark on that, because it connects with something that I was thinking about. That is another metaphor, because we think with metaphors all the time. Sometimes the metaphors are hidden, but we think with metaphors all the time. And when we think about the futures and the openness of futures, one of the most known metaphors and even images of how to think about the futures is the famous cone of futures. You know, the cone of futures, when you can find the probable, the preferable, the possible kind of futures, the desirable kind of futures. But the cone is very interesting because it has two main characteristics. One is that the cone is thinking about a linear time, as you said, a time that goes from one point to the other in one direction. But also the cone is thinking about that the possibilities of the future are closed. It's a closed figure. So maybe we have to change our metaphors to think about the future if we want to open the futures.
I mean, all of these metaphors are like basically making the reality, like the metaphor of growth, which was from biology. They're making the reality of our life. So I connect to this, like, that we need maybe a different metaphor. And like what I got from you, Cristina, is the big, and Christian, the big S at the end of everything. Like we have histories, and we have ecologies, and like we have futures, and like this entangled image, the image of the entangled dynamism that is going on, and the entanglement of the performative structure that are interacting. This emphasizes the big S, it emphasizes the diversity of the active agents, that if we call them agents, or active agencies or actants that are playing in, and it's not just like a scientist looking at biology, it's like our experienced life, it's a felt sense that we have. And maybe in this current dystopic image that we're living right now is like bringing it more to the surface, maybe. So yeah, I will.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I think we can follow the conversation outside this room, because it's getting very interesting. So I invite us to leave the room and to follow the conversation in another space. And thank you for being here, friends.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Great
and
fun.
have a nice evening.
But there are people coming. Maybe it's for.
Yeah, I think it's the next panel.
It's the next panel. Okay.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.